I'd like to welcome all of you to week number 8 in our ongoing studies in the book of Genesis. As you remember, we have spent the last 2 weeks discussing the story of Noah and the flood. And this week we will complete that story and prepare to go on to the last sections of Genesis that we will be studying in this semester. I'd like to begin by reminding us where we came from. You remember when we started our discussions in the book of Genesis, we asked the questions about the nature of mankind, of humanity, of man's place in the world and God's relationship with mankind. And then we came to the story of Noah, and in our first week's discussion of Noah, we talked about the reasons for God's decision to destroy the world. We analyzed what it was that caused God finally to give up on the world and mankind in those first 10 generations and to bring about the flood. And our last Zoom discussion, we spent a little bit of time discussing the methodology, the process by which God destroyed the world, why he used the flood. And we looked at the flood as kind of a rebirth of the world, a regenesis in which God attempts to create the world a second time, this time with a little bit of difference. And that really is our subject for our upcoming session on Monday night as we discuss the last questions related to the book of Noah. And these questions have to do with the issue of how has the world changed in the aftermath of the flood. What we discover is that the world following the flood is in some ways very different. In some ways, it's quite similar. First of all of the major characters in the world are the same. God, humanity, and the creatures of the world, they all remain the same. What changes in the aftermath of the stories that we read in chapters 7 and 8, what changes is not God. God is the same. It's not even human nature. As we will see, human nature remains basically the same post-flood as it was pre-flood. What really changes in the aftermath of the story of the destruction of the world is the nature of the rules by which man is to be governed and the nature of the expectations God has for what mankind can and is able to do in his job of watching over, tending, and caring for God's world. And as we will discover, the world continues on, but with a whole new different set of rules by which man is to live. I would like to mention to you in this session that hopefully you have read the relevant chapters. The chapters that we will be discussing are 8 and 9 in the book of Genesis. And hopefully you've also had a chance to look at Rabbi Melamad's book. I'm sorry, not Rabbi Melamad's book, Rabbi Sacks's book, the chapter called Beyond Obedience, which deals with the nature of Noah, which we will discuss also at the end of our discussion this coming Monday. In Rabbi Sacks's book, the relevant pages to look at are pages 43 to 47. I would like to present you with a series of questions. These questions, some of them are questions which have previously been asked, are on your previous sheet. Some of them are a little bit more specific, and I will send these questions along with the presentation video for you to consider as you reread. Hopefully you've already read for the first time, but as you reread this material. These are the questions. Question number 1, in what way was the post-flood world different from the world that existed during the first 10 generations from Adam to Noah? And all you have to do is, if you remember what the world was like before the flood, talk a little bit about what has changed in the world after the flood. What is different from what existed before? Question number 2, how does God's renewed covenant with Noah and his descendants reflect God's changed relationship with humanity following the flood? You will discover in chapter number 8 that the nature of God's relationship with Noah and his descendants has changed. It is expressed through a new covenant which God institutes with Noah and his descendants, and those new rules are contained in what are called the 7 mitzvot of the sons of Noah, or the Noahide laws. I will also be sending with this presentation video an article that describes those 7 laws. So the question is, How does the covenant that God makes with Noah and his descendants, renewed humanity, how does that reflect a changed relationship between God and human beings? Question number 3. What are the 7 Noahide laws? And to answer that, you need merely look at the sheet that I will be sending you. What are these 7 Noahide laws? And what is their significance for a regenerated humanity? In other words, how do these laws, the 7 general moral rules, how do these laws reflect the changed state of a post-flood world? Question number 4. In what ways does the rainbow serve as a fitting sign of the new covenant between God and the descendants of Noah? At the very end of the Noah story, when God makes a commitment not to destroy the world again, and he enters into this new covenant or agreement with Noah and his children, God sets as a sign of that covenant the bow, the rainbow in the sky. This question asks, how does the rainbow serve as a fitting sign, a symbol for what is represented in the new covenant? And finally, the last question that I'm going to ask you to consider is, after reading the story of Noah and the flood, what do you believe to be the real defect in Noah's character? Okay, especially as you read the end of chapter 9, so you find out what happens to Noah at the end of his life. What was the defect in Noah's character, and how does this defect help to explain the events that you will see mentioned at the very end of chapter 9, and how does it help us to understand the nature of Noah as compared with the nature of Abraham? These are the 5 questions we will address. Hopefully you have already read the relevant passages in Genesis chapters 8 and 9, and hopefully you have also read Rabbi Sachs's article, and when we come together on Monday night, we will discuss all of this material. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.